The moment Michael stepped out of the glass tower, the city felt louder, harsher, and crueler than it had ever been before, because in his pocket was a folded rejection slip and in his chest was the heavy truth that he had just failed the interview that was supposed to change everything for him and his daughter. His shoulders sagged as the revolving doors spun behind him, cutting him off from the polished world of power and success he had briefly touched, and for a second he just stood there, staring at the pavement, wondering how many more times life would ask him to be strong when he already felt completely empty. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and stories that remind us humanity still exists in this world, please take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel, and also tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because your support helps stories like this reach hearts that need them. Michael had not always been this tired man with worn shoes and anxious eyes. Once, he had dreams that felt big and reachable. He had studied hard, worked honestly, and built a modest but stable life with his wife and newborn daughter. But life, unpredictable and often unfair, had rewritten his story overnight when his wife passed away due to a sudden illness, leaving him alone with a baby who depended on him for everything. From that day on, Michael became both mother and father, provider and protector, and every decision he made was shaped by the small pair of hands that held his finger at night. He took whatever jobs he could find, sometimes working double shifts, sometimes skipping meals so his daughter could eat properly, and always telling himself that one good opportunity could finally lift them out of survival mode. That opportunity had seemed real when he was called for an interview at one of the most powerful companies in the city, owned by billionaire CEO Eleanor Whitmore. The building itself had intimidated him, with its shining floors and confident people who looked like they belonged there. Michael had prepared for weeks, practicing answers late at night after putting his daughter to sleep, reading notes during lunch breaks, and imagining a future where rent was no longer a monthly fear. But the interview did not go as planned. His nervousness showed, his worn suit betrayed his circumstances, and when he was asked about gaps in his employment, the truth of his life as a struggling single father made him feel exposed and small. When it ended, he knew before he was told that he had failed. Outside, the wind cut through his jacket as he walked away from the building, his mind already racing with calculations of overdue bills, daycare fees, and the quiet disappointment he would hide behind a smile when he picked up his daughter. What he did not know was that high above him, Eleanor Whitmore was standing by the window of her office, watching his retreating figure with an unease she could not explain. Eleanor was known across the business world as ruthless, brilliant, and untouchable. She had built her empire through discipline and sharp judgment, rarely allowing emotion to interfere with decisions. But something about Michael during the interview had unsettled her. It was not his mistakes or nervousness, but the exhaustion in his eyes, the sincerity in his answers, and the way he spoke about responsibility not as ambition but as love. Eleanor had grown up with privilege, but not warmth. Success had been her shield, control her comfort. Yet as she replayed the interview in her mind, she felt a quiet regret, a sense that she might have overlooked something far more valuable than polished confidence. Without fully understanding why, she left her office, heels echoing down the hallway, and descended to the lobby. By the time she reached the entrance, Michael was already halfway down the block, blending into the crowd of ordinary people carrying ordinary burdens. Eleanor did something she had not done in years. She ran. Michael heard footsteps behind him and turned, confused, as one of the most powerful women in the city called out to him, slightly breathless, her composed image momentarily forgotten. In that moment, the world seemed to pause. Eleanor did not apologize, did not explain herself in polished corporate language. She simply asked him to come back inside, because she wanted to understand his story better. Michael, stunned and unsure, followed her, hope and fear colliding in his chest. What followed was not an instant miracle, but a turning point. Eleanor listened as Michael spoke about his life, his daughter, and the quiet determination that kept him going even when he felt like giving up. For the first time in years, someone with power listened not to his resume, but to his reality. Eleanor realized that leadership was not only about brilliance, but about resilience, and that sometimes the strongest candidates were the ones who had survived the hardest lives. She offered Michael a position, not out of pity, but out of respect, with mentorship and flexibility that acknowledged his role as a father. The days that followed were not easy. Michael still struggled to adjust, still doubted himself, and still faced moments where exhaustion threatened to overwhelm him. But now, when he came home late, his tiredness was mixed with hope. His daughter noticed the change, the lighter tone in his voice, the way he smiled more often. Slowly, stability replaced fear. Bills were paid on time, evenings were calmer, and for the first time since his wife's passing, Michael allowed himself to imagine a future that was not defined by loss. Eleanor, too, was changed by the encounter. She began to see her company differently, reshaping policies to value humanity alongside performance. Michael's presence reminded her that success without compassion was hollow, and that sometimes the greatest impact came from one unexpected act of understanding. Their lives, once worlds apart, had intersected in a moment that rewrote both their stories. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness can change destinies and that second chances matter more than first impressions, please take a moment to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel, because your engagement helps spread these messages of hope and humanity. And before this story ends, we sincerely ask you to comment one word or one line that this story made you feel, because your thoughts give meaning to stories like this. As Michael tucked his daughter into bed one night, listening to her soft breathing, he understood that failure was not the end, but sometimes the doorway to something greater, and that even in a world driven by power and judgment, a single moment of compassion could echo through lives forever, leaving behind not just success, but something far more valuable, the quiet, enduring proof that humanity still has a place in our stories.